Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. You ready to jump into something new today?
Definitely. Always excited to explore new ideas and see what we can learn.
Well, today we are taking a look at the Future You formula. It's by Melvyn C.C. Valenzuela. Have you heard of it?
I have.
Yeah.
The title itself is pretty intriguing, right? It kind of promises this roadmap to success, which of course we all want.
Yeah, and the author himself is pretty interesting, too.
Oh, that's right. He's got this really diverse background, doesn't he?
Yeah, he was like a top executive at Toyota for a while. Then he went into security consulting.
And now he's a master life coach. So he's definitely not your typical self-help guru.
Right, exactly. It's like he's taken all these different experiences and kind of distilled them into this formula for success.
Which is what makes this book so interesting. You know, he's not just talking about theory,
Yeah.
he's actually lived it.
Exactly. And one of the things that really stood out to me in the book was this whole be, do, have paradigm. It's like the foundation of his whole approach.
Yes. That's actually what I was most drawn to as well. You know, it's funny because most of us, we approach life from this do-have-be perspective.
Like we think, if I just work hard enough, get that promotion and buy that house, then I'll finally be happy.
Right. It's like we're constantly chasing this external validation, thinking that once we achieve those things, then we'll finally be worthy or successful.
And it's such a trap, isn't it? Because even when we do achieve those things, it never seems to be enough.
Never. We just move the goalpost further and further away.
Yeah.
And in the process, we end up sacrificing our health, our relationships, the things that actually matter.
It's like that classic example Valenzuela uses in the book about the employee who's always striving for the next promotion, thinking, once I'm the CEO, then I'll have it all figured out.
But they end up working themselves to the bone, neglecting their families, their own well-being.
And even if they do reach that top spot, they're often left feeling empty and unfulfilled. Like, is this all there is?
Exactly. And that's where this whole be-do-have idea comes in. It completely flips the script.
It does. It's like instead of saying, I need to achieve X, Y, and Z in order to be happy, you're saying, who do I want to be? And how can I start embodying those qualities right now?
Precisely. It's about shifting your focus from external achievements to internal transformation.
So instead of grinding away to become a successful entrepreneur, you first cultivate the mindset and beliefs of one, embracing things like confidence, risk-taking, resilience.
Right. You start acting as if you're already that person.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you start attracting the opportunities and resources that align with that identity.
Okay, I'm starting to get it. But how do we actually go about defining who we want to be? It seems like kind of an abstract concept.
One of the tools Valenzuela uses to guide this process is the concept of archetypes. Have you heard of those?
I've heard them mentioned in like psychology and literature, but I'm not really sure how they apply to like personal development.
So archetypes are basically these universal patterns of behavior that help us understand our strengths and potential. They're like these blueprints for different ways of being in the world.
Okay, so can you give an example? Like, how would understanding archetypes actually help us in this self-discovery process?
Sure. Let's say you resonate with the creator archetype. This might mean you thrive in environments that allow for innovation and self-expression.
So someone who's drawn to art, music, entrepreneurship, that kind of thing.
Exactly. Understanding this could help you make more fulfilling career choices, even approach problem solving from a different angle.
Yeah.
It's not about fitting into a box, but about leveraging your natural strengths.
So it's more about recognizing patterns in our behavior and using that knowledge to make more aligned choices. I can see how that could be really helpful in understanding ourselves better.
It is, and the book actually delves into several different archetypes: the leader, the creator, the caregiver, the explorer, the sage, just to name a few.
Okay, those definitely sound familiar. And I imagine most of us probably resonate with elements of several different archetypes, right? It's not like we're just one thing.
You're absolutely right. We're complex beings.
Yeah.
But recognizing the dominant archetypes that influence our behavior can be incredibly insightful.
So we're starting with the B, identifying who we want to become and understanding our inherent strengths through these archetypes. But then how do we move into the do phase? How do we start taking action from this new sense of self?
Valenzuela emphasizes that our language plays a crucial role in bridging this gap.
Okay, so we're not just thinking it, we're actually talking about it.
Right. He says we need to shift from I need to I am.
That's interesting. So instead of saying, I need to be more confident, you would say, I am confident.
Exactly. It's about embodying those qualities you desire rather than constantly striving for them.
So are we talking about affirmations here, like literally saying these positive statements out loud to ourselves?
Affirmations are definitely a powerful tool, and the book provides specific techniques for internalizing this positive language. But it's more than just positive thinking. It's about rewiring our neural pathways, creating new thought patterns that support this future you we're creating.
Okay, so we're starting to see how this all ties together. We define who we want to be, we use language to reinforce those qualities, and then presumably our actions start to align with that new identity. But what happens when we hit those inevitable roadblocks? How do we stay motivated and positive when things get tough?
Well, Valenzuela acknowledges that challenges are part of the journey, and he offers some really practical advice on developing resilience.
Okay, so what are some of those strategies? Because let's be real, we all need a little help staying positive when things aren't going our way.
One of the most powerful things he talks about is the importance of connecting with your purpose. He even has this great quote, "Purpose fuels perseverance."
That's a great quote. I can see how knowing your why would give you the strength to push through the tough times. It's like if you're clear on your purpose, those setbacks don't feel as insurmountable.
Exactly. And in those moments when you're feeling discouraged, the book suggests strategies like practicing gratitude, connecting with something larger than yourself, or seeking support from your network. It's about recognizing that you don't have to go through challenges alone.
So it's about building a support system and having those tools in place to help you navigate those inevitable bumps in the road. That makes a lot of sense. And speaking of support systems, Valenzuela also talks about the importance of our environment, right? How our surroundings can impact our mindset and our ability to achieve our goals.
That's a crucial part of the be-do-have paradigm. He argues that our environment should reflect and support the future you we're striving to become. So if you want to be a successful writer, you might create a dedicated writing space that minimizes distractions and reflects your creative identity.
So it's not just about decluttering and making things look nice. It's about consciously designing a space that supports who you want to be and what you want to achieve. That's a really interesting concept.
It is.
Yeah.
And it makes sense when you think about it. Our surroundings can either energize us or drain us.
I've definitely noticed that in my own life. When my workspace is cluttered, my thinking feels cluttered too. But when my space is clean and organized, I feel more focused and productive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And Valenzuela goes beyond just the physical environment. He also talks about our digital environment.
That's so relevant today. I mean, most of us spend so much time online. It's like our digital space is an extension of our physical space.
Absolutely. He talks about curating our social media feeds, being mindful of the websites we visit, and even managing our inboxes.
Yeah. It's about being intentional about what we consume online and how it affects our mindset. Think about it. Are you following accounts that inspire you? Or are you constantly comparing yourself to others and feeling inadequate?
Oh, that is a little too close to home. Sometimes I get caught up in those comparisons.
Yeah,
It's like this digital energy vampire.
it can be. That's why Valenzuela suggests being really selective about who and what we allow into our digital space.
Makes Unfollow those accounts that make you feel bad. Limit your time on news sites that trigger anxiety.
Yeah.
And make a conscious effort to seek out content that uplifts and motivates you.
So it's like being the curator of our own digital museum, out with the negativity and in with the inspiration.
Exactly. Instead of mindlessly scrolling, we're
Yeah.
choosing to engage with things that nourish our minds and support our goals.
Love that.
Yeah.
So we're paying attention to our environment, both physical and digital. But I'm curious about the role of planning in all of this. I'm a big planner myself, but Valenzuela seems to emphasize the importance of faith over rigid plans. How do those two things go together?
Right. It's not about abandoning planning altogether. It's about finding that sweet spot between taking action and surrendering to the flow of life.
Okay.
Valenzuela argues that rigid plans can actually backfire, especially in a world that's constantly changing.
Yeah, I can see that. No matter how carefully we plan, there are always going to be unexpected events that throw us off course.
Exactly. And that's where faith comes in. Faith in yourself, faith in the process, and maybe even faith in something bigger than yourself. Whatever that looks like for you.
Okay.
It's about having the courage to adjust course when needed and trusting that things will ultimately work out.
So being adaptable, open to new possibilities, while still taking those concrete steps towards our goals.
Precisely. And when we talk about taking action, one of the biggest hurdles many of us face is procrastination.
Procrastination. Don't even get me started. I know what I need to do, but sometimes it's like pulling teeth to actually get started.
It's a common struggle.
Yeah.
And Valenzuela has some really interesting insights on this. He suggests that procrastination is often rooted in fear.
Fear.
Fear of failure, fear of judgment, and sometimes even fear of success.
Fear of success. That's a new one. Why would anyone be afraid of succeeding?
Well, it might sound counterintuitive, but sometimes we unconsciously sabotage ourselves. because we're afraid of what might happen if we actually achieve our goals.
Okay, I guess I can see that.
Maybe we're afraid of the responsibility that comes with success. Maybe we're afraid of how it might change us. Or maybe we're even afraid of disappointing others if we outshine them.
Wow, so it's like sometimes procrastination isn't just laziness, it's actually a defense mechanism against these deeper fears we haven't even acknowledged.
Exactly. And once we bring those fears to light, we can start to address them.
Okay, so how do we do that?
Valenzuela suggests things like breaking down tasks into smaller, more manageable steps, setting realistic deadlines, and creating a supportive environment that minimizes distractions.
So instead of getting overwhelmed by this big, scary goal, we're breaking it down into bite-sized pieces that feel less intimidating.
Right. And we're creating a space where we can actually focus and get things done.
I like that. And it's also about challenging those negative self-talk patterns that feed procrastination, right?
Absolutely. Instead of saying, I'm so lazy,
Yeah.
you might say, I'm capable of completing this task, and I'm going to take it one step at a time.
Much better. So we're taking action, we're challenging our fears, and we're being kind to ourselves. But what about when we're just feeling totally overwhelmed by life in general? I mean, things can get pretty chaotic sometimes.
That's where Valenzuela's emphasis on structure comes in. He dedicates a whole section of the book to building a success system that helps us stay organized, focused, and on track.
A success system. I love that. But to be honest, I'm not the most organized person. What are some practical tips to bring more order to our lives?
One of the most powerful tools he recommends is time blocking.
Time blocking.
It's basically scheduling specific blocks of time for different activities.
So instead of having a to-do list a mile long, we're actually assigning dedicated time slots to each task.
Precisely. Like making appointments with ourselves for work, exercise errands, even relaxation.
Wow. And I guess when you actually stick to those time blocks,
Right.
you're much less likely to get derailed by distractions.
You got it. It also forces you to prioritize. You have to decide what's truly important and allocate your time accordingly.
I can see how that would be really helpful. It's like creating a container for your energy and focus. And it kind of takes away that excuse of, I don't have time, right? Because if something's not on your schedule, it's not a priority.
Exactly. Time blocking is really about taking control of your schedule
Yeah.
and designing a life that reflects your values and your goals.
Yeah.
And speaking of designing a life you love, Valenzuela also talks about the importance of mastering your daily schedule, not just in terms of time management, but also in terms of energy management.
Energy management. That's so important. I've noticed that I have certain times of day when I'm super productive and other times when I feel like my brain is running on fumes.
We all do.
Mhm.
And instead of fighting against our natural rhythms, Valenzuela suggests we learn to work with them. Identify those peak energy periods and schedule your most demanding tasks during those times.
Okay, so if I'm a morning person, that's when I should be tackling those big brain-draining projects.
Yeah.
And save the less demanding things like checking email or doing errands for later in the day when my energy levels naturally dip.
Exactly. Work with your body's natural flow, not against it.
That makes a lot of sense. But even when I'm feeling energized and I've blocked off time for a specific task, I still find myself getting distracted sometimes. Any tips for staying focused?
Valenzuela is a big advocate for creating a distraction-free environment. Turn off those notifications, close unnecessary tabs on your computer, put your phone on airplane mode, whatever it takes to minimize those interruptions.
So it's like creating a little productivity bubble around yourself.
Exactly. And if you do find your mind wandering,
Yeah.
gently guide it back to the task at hand. It takes practice, but over time you'll strengthen those focus muscles.
It's like building a mental gym for your attention span.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
And just like with physical exercise, consistency is key. The more you practice focusing, the better you'll become at it.
Okay, so we're scheduling, strategically minimizing distractions, and building our focus muscles. But let's be real, we're all human, and even with the best intentions, we're going to mess up sometimes. We're going to make mistakes. How does Valenzuela suggest we deal with those inevitable setbacks without spiraling into self-criticism?
That's where his background as a master life coach really shines. He emphasizes the importance of self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
It's about treating yourself with the same kindness and understanding you would offer a friend.
Okay, so instead of beating yourself up for a mistake, you try to learn from it and move forward.
Exactly. He even suggests reframing those mistakes as learning opportunities.
I like that. It takes the sting out of failure, doesn't it? Because, let's be honest, failure is just a part of life, is how we learn and grow.
Absolutely. And remember, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how we respond to them. Do we let them derail us, or do we use them as fuel to keep moving forward?
That's a great point. It's not about avoiding mistakes altogether. It's about learning to navigate them with grace and resilience. And speaking of navigating challenges, one thing that often trips me up is the fear of asking for what I want, whether it's a raise, a promotion, or just setting better boundaries. I think a lot of us hold ourselves back because we're afraid of rejection.
It's a common fear, but it can be incredibly limiting. Valenzuela encourages us to challenge those limiting beliefs and recognize that asking for what we want is actually a sign of self-respect.
So it's not about being demanding or entitled. It's about knowing our worth and having the courage to advocate for our needs.
Exactly. And remember, no doesn't always mean never. It might just mean not right now. Or it might be an invitation to refine your approach or explore other options.
That's a good point. Sometimes we need to be persistent and keep asking until we get the answer we're looking for. Or maybe we realize that what we thought we wanted isn't actually what's best for us after all.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's all part of the learning process. And as we become more confident in asking for what we want, we start to create a life that truly reflects our desires.
It's like we're taking ownership of our lives, shaping our own destinies. Instead of waiting for permission or approval, we're stepping into our power and creating the future we want.
And that's what the Future You formula is all about. It's about empowering us to become the architects of our own lives.
Yeah. It really is empowering when you think about it. Like we have more control than we realize.
We do. And one of the biggest things that holds us back is that need for external validation. Like we're always looking to others for approval instead of trusting our own inner compass.
It's so easy to get caught up in that, especially in today's world with social media and everything.
Right? It's like this constant comparison game. And it's exhausting.
It really is. So how do we break free from that?
Well, Valenzuela talks about shifting our focus from external validation to internal fulfillment.
Okay, so it's about finding that sense of satisfaction from within rather than seeking it from outside sources.
Exactly. And this is where the be do have paradigm comes full circle. When we focus on being the best version of ourselves, the doing and the having naturally align with that internal compass.
So it's not about chasing external success for the sake of it. It's about creating a life that feels authentic and meaningful to us.
Precisely. And that might look different for everyone. For some people, it might involve achieving traditional markers of success, like a thriving career or financial abundance. For others, it might be more about prioritizing relationships, creative pursuits, or making a positive impact on the world.
It's about defining success on our own terms, not based on some external standard. I love that. But it's also important to acknowledge that this is a journey, not a destination, right? There's no magic formula that's going to instantly transform us into our ideal selves.
You're absolutely right. The Future You formula isn't a quick fix. It's a lifelong process of self-discovery and growth, and it's going to involve challenges and setbacks along the way. But the beauty of it is that we get to choose how we respond to those challenges.
We can choose to see them as opportunities for learning and growth rather than as failures. We can choose to approach them with self-compassion rather than self-criticism, and we can choose to keep moving forward even when it feels difficult.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And that's what ultimately sets successful people apart. Their resilience, their willingness to embrace the journey, and their unwavering commitment to becoming the best versions of themselves.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Future You formula, we want to leave you with this final thought-provoking question from the book. What small step can you take today to start living your dream life?
It doesn't have to be a grand gesture. It could be something as simple as writing down your goals, visualizing your ideal future, or identifying one habit you want to change.
Just take that first step, and then another and another. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And as you continue on this path of self-discovery and growth, remember to celebrate your wins, learn from your setbacks, and never stop believing in your potential to create the future you desire.
You've got this.
That's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.